Good morning, Trains Nation. Welcome to another video episode of Trains Newswire. Today is Friday, September 23rd, 2016. I'm Steve Sweeney.
Good morning, I'm Jim Wrinn.
And we're so glad that you could join us again for Trains Newswire video. Now, I'm back into the saddle this week for Newswire, and I thought, gee, maybe I'll have a week off. Nope. There's a lot of news going on.
It just piles up while you're gone, Steve.
I
That's
noticed.
what it is. Now, we're teasing.
Yeah.
It's just a constant flow. In fact, through this morning, there are almost 50 stories on Newswire.
That's right.
And a lot of exclusives that you won't see anywhere else except for here on our website.
Absolutely. Our correspondents and contributors have been working overtime on these things.
We've dispatched them throughout the world. Steve was in Philadelphia last week.
David
was in Germany last week. And man, we got people all over the place.
That's right. So, no, it's good. Well, let's talk about InnoTrends. First off, David Lassen's been in Switzerland and Germany now for almost 2 weeks, and he was at a GE, a General Electric news conference yesterday, where they were talking about self-aware trains, which is really pretty interesting, you know, from a technology point of view.
Smarter trains.
Smarter trains, yeah. They're talking about having, not just knowing where a freight car or a train or a locomotive is, but, you know, monitoring the cargo, monitoring brake forces, brake pressures, side-to-side lateral forces. How does that impact the wheel? How does that impact the rail, the ballast? Oh, and on-time performance as far as getting your scheduled freight from A to B in a smooth, reasonable fashion. I think it's really interesting.
You edit the technology column. That must be really cool to you to see.
Oh, it is.
Also, there's so much more emphasis on diagnostic and predictive maintenance in this case, because instead of reporting failures or saying, okay, I need oil or whatever, the systems now are going to be saying, I'm going to need maintenance at such a point.
Exactly.
So it's really cool to see that. This is probably fodder for upcoming technology column.
Well,
I'm
you know,
assuming.
it's
You and I haven't talked about it yet.
No, but
I would think it would be.
I'd like to see more of what David comes back with from Germany. But you know, from the 3 or 4 stories I've seen from him so far, especially this GE thing, you know, transitioning railroads, especially American freight railroads, from run to fail, which is change a part when it breaks, swap out a locomotive when it doesn't run. You're going to, as you said, the predictive maintenance, and what that means is you just won't see broken down trains. That's something that railroads have not contemplated.
It's an important part of scheduled railroading, which of course everybody wants and is beneficial to everyone, shippers, crews, you know, everybody. So I'm anxious to learn more about this. Can't wait to see it in a technology column coming to you.
Oh,
the other big news out of InnoTrans, of course, was Alstom's announcement about its hydrogen-powered train, which it hopes to debut in 2018 in Germany. I've heard about this concept for better than a dozen years now, and I think it's great that somebody's going to finally get it out on the road and give it a try.
Oh, totally agree. And the problem has always been that the technology was too expensive to make it small enough to make it, you know, economically feasible to put onto a passenger train. And it looks like Alstom's done it. Hydrogen fuel cell.
And it looks like it's going to debut on a multiple unit train set, which will be great because it is small and it's a perfect test. So
it is. And you know, I wish them luck in Germany and France and wherever else they want to use it.
It'd be fun to see it over here.
Exactly. I want to see it here in the States.
It'd be really cool to see it.
It'd be interesting. Something else that's kind of interesting, just to change it up a little bit, the Surface Transportation Board ruled this week that an oil company is not a railroad. Did you see this one?
I did. And in fact, I had to read through it just a little bit to get to it, but there was a dispute in one of the Sacramento area cities. They didn't want oil trains going through their city. And of course, we all know that interstate commerce is regulated by the Surface Transportation Board. So local municipalities don't get to say what does and doesn't go through on their tracks. But it was a special use permit for a transfer facility was what it was. And
to be built by the oil company.
Right, and of course the STP does not handle those things.
Right.
So an interesting way to try to circumvent oil trains in your community.
Yeah, yeah. But they did say that if the railroad had applied to build this transfer facility for the oil company on their behalf, that they would have had to rule in favor.
Things would be different.
Yes, they would have ruled in favor of the railroad. So that's very interesting. And also, there's an ongoing dispute between CSX Transportation and Watco and Norfolk Southern in Michigan over trackage rights from Grand Rapids. Really odd, really interesting to watch. Filings are flying with Surface Transportation Board. We've got Bob Edmondson in D.C. on this. And it boils down to rights were not, or maybe the rights, trackage rights were not clearly transferred from Norfolk Southern to a Watco short line, the Grand Elk Railroad, cool name. And then CSX disputes that. You shouldn't be running trains here. So it's odd that this is actually coming to light and that it hasn't been resolved privately. So we're going to be watching that.
With all the spin-offs that are going on right now in the Eastern Class 1 railroads, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm going to wager that that's not going to be the only one that we're going to see like that.
No, I agree. But good that we have someone in Washington watching this for us.
Absolutely.
Jim, what piqued your interest this week?
Well, I'm a big traffic figures fan, as you know, so I always look at that first. Traffic report for this week was down 5.1% from last year, but bright spot was grain was back up again.
Big harvests.
Roughly about 20%, I'm seeing, or more for this year. Yeah, big harvest, moving a lot of grain from last year, trying to get it to market. So that's some good news, at least in that area, while coal and petroleum are still down.
Yeah. Now we did have a couple of steam-related items this week. Really great that Brian Smith was able to visit Reading T1 number 2100 out in Cleveland and get a live video for us, or excuse me, a recorded video on what that was, what's going on with that. They're lapping a new throttle as he saw it. You can see that on Trains Newswire. And there are a couple of other steam stories. One was in the Pacific Northwest, correct? With a locomotive that's going up for a sheriff's sale?
Shack's locomotive. Those
Okay.
of you who are fans of the movie Emperor of the North,
Yeah.
with the Ernest Borgnine movie of the 1970s, will remember Oregon Pacific and Eastern 19, which has been at the Wairika Western for years and years and years. And there was a dispute about its restoration, and the restorer, I think, has taken steps to recover their money now from the locomotive. So a really good-looking logging 282 out there in the Pacific Northwest needs a good home. October the 6th is the date of the sheriff's sale, and it'll be interesting to see where that one ends up.
How common is it for a steam locomotive, and kind of a famous steam locomotive, to be in this kind of a position?
I don't recall it before.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there's been some instance of this before, some sort of mechanics lien or whatever, but I don't ever recall it going to a sheriff's sale.
Sure. Are you going to bid on it? Are we going to see you out of the office on that day?
Maybe I'll see how much is in the company's fund for steam locomotive acquisition and see what we can do with that.
There's got to be a line item for that.
That would be fun. Sure.
I'd love that.
Yeah, not a problem.
No, that's cool. So one last thing that I wanted to mention here before any more time went by, Transportation Safety Board of Canada, sort of the FRA of Canada, has come out in favor of more voice recorders and more video recorders in locomotive cabs. Now that's something that's not really new to us, but that they're actually coming out and making a forward proposal saying this ought to be done. And in Canada, it's getting some controversy stirred up in Canada and among locomotive crews. So I'll be interested to see where this turns out and what they're going to do with it. Is it going to be a safety only? After the fact, after an accident, we'll go back to the recording and see what happened, or will they be monitoring crews regularly?
I've got one last story to talk about. It's some news you guys can use. Go take a look at our Newswire piece from earlier this week about Amtrak assigning its last Superdome, the Ocean View, to the Adirondack, starting September the 29th and going all the way through November the 1st. And that is a spectacular car. If you get a chance to go ride it in New England's beautiful fall colors, go do it.
Absolutely. It's beautiful, beautiful up there at this time of year. So it's now time for trivia. I was not here last week. Do you remember last week's question?
I do remember last week's question.
Okay. Would you kindly refresh our viewers' minds about what that was?
We asked them to list three famous steam excursion locomotives that were mentioned in Newswire last week.
Okay. And those steam locomotives. No, we didn't pick a winner this week. We've been kind of swamped.
We're a little
with deadlines.
busy with people traveling and everything, and we're buttoning up the December issue. So we're going to punt this week on naming a winner till next week. But we do have a trivia question for today. Yes, we do have a trivia question for today. And that trivia question is, looking back on this week's Newswire, the original question we already mentioned in Newswire. What? We've mentioned it already? We already mentioned it already. So I'm going to come up with a different one. So what streetcar line is going to start morning service
in September. What streetcar line in the United States is mentioned on Newswire is going to start up brand new service, morning service, starting later on in September?
I think I read this, but
Yeah,
now I
you
got to
sh-
go
you
back
should
and read the
this.
wire
Well,
again.
you've got to, absolutely. And then, you see, I forget what you promised last week. This week's winner will get a brand new, just out of the package, Trains necktie. This is left over from the 70th anniversary. We found it in a box.
We
hermetically
found,
sealed.
We found a lost shipment. This is the New York Central Hudson in the barn in Ohio. We'll
Yes.
perpetuate that urban
Yes.
legend. But this is literally one of those. We had these done 6 years ago. We found a handful, and so we'd like to make it available to one lucky viewer.
Yes, one lucky viewer. So if you are the person who correctly answers the question and are randomly chosen, the question is, what streetcar line in the United States is opening up new morning service? It's on Newswire this week. Be sure to get it. Put your answer in the comment section down below, and then we will randomly choose one of you next week. And Jim will also randomly choose someone from last week's video to win. And I believe they won. What were they going to win?
I think we were peddling Colorado Railroads last
Colorado
week.
Railroads. Wonderful edition. Wonderful edition. 100 pages of steam photos and writing that you can only get from us here at Trains. So, yeah?
Don't forget to send in news clips, news
right.
tips, everything else to, what's the address?
The address is newswire@trainsmag.com. Newswire@trainsmag.com for news tips, videos, and helpful suggestions that we will obviously use in the daily making of Newswire. We get suggestions every day, all day, and I do use them. So that's great. For everyone at Trains, enjoy the weekend.
Have a great one. In northern Germany, on the coast of the Baltic Sea, runs an amazing narrow-gauge steam railway. It is noteworthy for its operating locomotives, the oldest of which date back to the 1930s, and the newest, which dates only to 2009. But the Malibahn is most unusual for a portion of its route that is street running, a true throwback to the days when steam trains, cars, and pedestrians shared a right-of-way. Let's meet the Mali.